All right, and welcome everybody back to another episode of Mark's Remarks. I'm your host, as always, Mark Radigan, joining you with another Rhody Sports spring team, trying to get a lot more coverage of some of the smaller teams that I don't necessarily talk to that much on my podcast, trying to change that, trying to get a feel for all of the different aspects of the URI athletic community. So this week, I'm joined by my second ever guest from URI Baseball. I'm joined by right-handed pitcher Brandon Hsu. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing good, man. Happy to have you on. Happy to start talking about Rhody baseball. Obviously, I had Captain Anthony DePino on the show last year. Got a little bit of a feel for where the program was heading when we talked ahead of about 5 games into the season in the spring. Obviously, an interesting season coming out of non-conference play with obviously heading down south, playing all those crazy teams, and then heading into conference play, finishing just below 500. But a relatively positive season across a bunch of different mediums, but we'll get to that a little bit. I want to learn more, or why we're here today at least, is to learn more about your journey and just how you got into this position, how you ended up playing baseball in Kingston. So, I mean, Brandon, just take me back. Just where did your baseball journey start?
As long as I can remember, honestly, just growing up in the backyard playing wiffle ball, I feel like that's where every baseball player's story begins. I got an older brother who he plays at Division III back in New Hampshire, but we would just be in the backyard with our neighbors for hours during the summer after school, just barefoot in the grass, hitting dingers into the woods, and that's where it all started, I'd say. And from there, it's just kind of going up the ranks. Obviously T-ball up into like Little League, Cal Ripken, and then travel ball, and that whole ordeal starts and gets serious, and high school ball, and then here I am. So, but I think the kid's dream as a young kid is like always like, oh, I want to play for the Red Sox, like, and that was obviously like I'm a New England kid, like still that'd be a great opportunity, but that's where it all started.
Yeah, so growing up as a New England kid, I imagine that baseball was your number one passion growing up, playing it just all throughout. Did you have anybody like your parents or anybody that were kind of like introducing you to the game early on, trying to push you in there to get you on the path as early as possible to be successful?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say my dad and my older brother, honestly, because he got started on that track a little bit sooner than I did, and he's 2 years older than me. And I would say just my dad always coached us when we were younger, and just having a game of catch in the backyard and stuff. And that's where that, like, I would say once I got older, he definitely pushed me, which was a good thing. But yeah, no, it was great. I think that's my main inspiration when I was younger.
And so as you were aging through baseball and going through the different ranks of youth ball and started to play more competitively, was there a moment that you kind of look back on where you were like, okay, I want to really pursue this dream that I have? Like, it goes beyond it being a dream of like, oh, I want to play baseball in college, I want to do that, to being like, you know what? Like, I have the talent to do it. Let's start putting in the work to get there.
Yeah, I would probably say my freshman or sophomore year of high school. I'd say probably my freshman year, like just kind of starting to break through, mature into my body a little bit as I got older. Start taking training like a little bit more seriously, especially in the off season. And I think like I said, my brother was a huge help with that because he was older, he was already going through that stuff, and for me to see him training so hard and like having that motivation, like kind of fueled my fire from a younger age compared to like some of the kids I went to high school with, and that's probably around freshman year, probably the off season, the winter when we first started taking training a little seriously.
And so at what point did you realize that you wanted to be a pitcher? Because obviously baseball, everyone grows up, I know this from my own experience, you grow up playing so many different positions and then you eventually figure out where you're most comfortable. But being a bit of a smaller guy, landing on pitching as your number one thing, that must have been an interesting choice.
Yeah, I know. Tell me. I mean, I still want to hit. Like, obviously, everyone wants to hit, but I'm just that I was never. I was good in high school. I mean, being in New Hampshire, like, there's not like I was in Division 2, my high school for New Hampshire, so the competition wasn't that great. So obviously, I had a great time hitting, but I knew from like once I was 15, I think I was playing for a program called NEB in Mass, based in Mass. And that summer, became a PO, pitcher only. And I still hit in high school, but once that happened, I was like, all right, like pitching's my thing. And I always knew like I was a better pitcher than I was a hitter. And that kind of just led me down to that path. I could have probably two-wayed at like a D3, but in order to kind of chase that dream of playing Division 1 baseball, pitching was definitely the best option. And I mean, I love like you have the ball as a pitcher. I mean, my pitching coach, Coach Fisher, says it all the time. Like you have the ball. Like no one can play the game until like you make a pitch. Like you could literally just stand there on the mound and like you're in full control. So I love that part of it. I love striking guys out. So
And so when you take the hitting aspect of your overall training regimen advent, you fully focus on pitching. What was that sort of process like when you made that transition from being a youth baseball player that was constantly hitting and doing that to more of a full focus on pitching, like as you're going through sort of like your college process and really getting going, working with like outside pitching coaches and stuff? Like how intense does that training become?
yeah, I mean, I think that decision, like obviously I still like hit when I had free time because I was still a hitter in high school, but that decision really like opened some doors for me because like obviously there's only so many hours in the day and I was a high school kid, like I wanted to have fun, like hang out with my friends and stuff. But like to be able to free up time and like reps honestly to dedicate towards throwing and pitching, like definitely got me to where I am now, and like the strides that I made during that like 2 to 3 year period was like tremendous because I didn't have to focus on both things at once.
And so, working with different coaches outside and within your high school program, I imagine really helped you put you on a serious track to develop and become a competent Division 1 baseball player. When you kind of look back at your overall high school experience and look back at some of the people that you worked with that may have helped you guide you along the way, who are some people like coaches or even other players that you worked with that you credit for getting you to be successful in this position?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I owe so much to two guys that own a facility up in New Hampshire in Exeter, which is an hour from me, but like they have an insane culture there. Carson Cross and Logan Carmen. Carson, it's the facility 603 Evo, and starting probably my sophomore year of high school, like I started going there pretty much every day after school. Like my brother thankfully had his license, so after school we'd make the trek up there and we'd be there for like 4 or 5 hours some days just because like you were able to hang out in that environment, and like they foster an environment where like everyone there is like after the same goals, and you're constantly around people that like are already at that next level. So when I was in high school, like I was training with guys who were in college playing Division 1 baseball, playing in the minor leagues when they came back for the winter. And to see like that work ethic and to see everyone like with one goal to just try and get better and being able to have fun at the same time while doing that was like a game changer for me. Like I credit I mean Carson actually, he played at UConn with the Coach Fisher, who's the pitching coach at URI right now, and Coach Vance, who recruited me to URI, but he's at the University of Arizona right now as the pitching coach. They both played at UConn, so they played together, and that's how the connection came to be, and I'm forever grateful for it. So.
And so having a group of guys that you're actively striving for the same goal towards really makes all of the difficult work that much more enjoyable. And I feel like it definitely makes that entire process easier. But not to mention having someone in your family going through that same process. Like you've talked about your brother playing college baseball up in New Hampshire and being a little bit older than you and still going through the same sort of process. How is it just day to day working out with him, training with him, and doing those sorts of activities with him. How did that help you develop as a player?
Yeah, I mean it was crazy, and at times like, I mean, I don't know if you have any siblings, but that little sibling rivalry, like we always thought one of us was better than the other. Like I would never tell him that he's better than me, and he would never tell me that I'm better than him because that's just how it is. And that honestly, like it's just a healthy like competitive environment, and he kind of led the way in that case. And like I would always be like, I can hit the ball harder than you, like I could throw the ball harder than you, and he would give that give that right back to me. And honestly, it's the same thing with like all my boys up at 603 Evo. Like a kid Zach Morris, he was a freshman last year. He's a sophomore pitcher on URI now. He's from Gloucester, Mass, and he trains at 603 Evo. And like we go back for the winter, and we'll be there for like 5 hours and just giving each other and kind of going back and forth. Like, but it's like all healthy. Like that's what like makes people better people. Like competing at literally everything.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. I'm even though me and my younger sister never really competed at sports together, but I totally get that sort of sibling rivalry.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
it
exactly.
makes you strive to be better because you will always want to be better than your siblings, so it makes you want to do better at everything else. But that's awesome though. And so kind of just to shift gears a little bit, talking about your development and to continuing to train. At this point, you're now a sophomore in high school, really establishing yourself as a bit of a college pitching prospect. At what point did your overall college recruitment process begin? Did it, because with baseball, it can start very early. I mean, you can see guys committing to play baseball at even the freshman or eighth grade level if they're really that good. So, just how did your college recruitment process begin? What were some of the schools that you were talking to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I don't know. They changed the recruiting rules recently, I think. But I remember when I was in middle school, I would see like seventh, eighth graders committing to like Mississippi State, which was crazy. But I would say mine started uh, probably about the end of the spring, my sophomore year, um, when I was at Hollis Brookline, and it kind of carried over into junior year, which actually during the spring, that's when COVID happened, and my recruiting was, I think, like I can say it's unlike anyone else because it was strictly off of like video online and like phone calls.
Oh,
Like I
really?
never, yeah, well, like coaches saw me play that sophomore year and fall ball that junior year when I was at school, but besides that, like once COVID hit, there was like a recruiting dead period for until September, I think. So they were allowed to like call and talk to you and stuff, but they weren't allowed to go out and see you play. And obviously, like games weren't even really happening at that time. So it was like I thank Twitter because or now X.com, obviously. But I would just post videos in my backyard. We had a little pitching mound, and my brother used to be a catcher, so it would be like just the best setup. Like honestly, like we would just that's the only thing we did during COVID is just like work out and train because there there's nothing else you could do. Everything was shut down. But yeah, I would just constantly send videos to Coach Vance, who isn't here anymore. But and we go back and forth, and I had a pretty like educated idea of the whole pitching thing when I was pretty young, which I think made me better because I obviously you said it earlier I'm like 5'9", 5'10", like not the most genetically gifted athlete, but yeah, and it was like all through Twitter, so it was kind of weird. I was obviously talking to URI, I was talking to Dayton, and UMass, which are both in conference. Then you like UMass Lowell, Northeastern, pretty much all local mid majors, which I was fine with. So
And so, kind of calling back to when I talked to Anthony at the start of this past 2024 season, he was talking about his experiences during COVID, being able to work out at a facility that was local to him, because obviously, like you mentioned, there was that sort of lockout where recruitment wasn't possible, and so it was that sort of dead period where you're not playing competitive baseball, but you're also not getting recruited, so there's just really nothing going on. And he talked about how it had an impact on him mentally as it did to many players. And it was that drive to work, but you also had to really keep yourself in check and really keep yourself motivated because there was such a long period where you really weren't doing much. And so every athlete seems to have responded to the pandemic differently, and it urged them to work on certain things and really keep themselves self-motivated. How did you respond to that? Obviously, working out with your brother, doing videos in the backyard to keep yourself in the loop of college coaches. But in terms of just kind of taking a step away from the game of baseball in a sense, how did that impact you mentally?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like almost like an itch to get back because like we obviously knew like eventually like the world wasn't going to be shut down forever, and like that itch to get back. And I know like our coaches tell us all the time when we go home for winter break, it's like this is the time where like you either like make it or break it. Like you can take advantage of this time to get better while you're not at school, or like you can do nothing and like the choice is yours. And it's a similar situation there. Like I mean, I think my brother, my best friend Drew, who plays at Lesley University in Massachusetts, um, we the three of us like it was almost like psychotic. Like we just wake up, eat, work out, go to the turf field, and I remember actually once like because you weren't technically allowed to use the high school turf field because it's COVID, so the athletic director happened to be there, and he was like, "You guys can't be here." Like and we were throwing and like they knew that my brother and I lived in the same house. Like it was just Drew that was there, and he's like, "You guys can't like be throwing here. Like it's a liability issue." So I remember we were literally threw in the parking lot sometimes just because they like didn't want us to be there. And thankfully, like I had a little like home gym kind of like didn't have much, but it was enough to make do. And I had the bullpen mound in the backyard, and that's all I really needed. Like, and that's I mean, the drive was always there. I think that's when I like really started like clicking. Is like I can use this time. Like I think I was a little behind the curve in the whole recruiting process, and I was like, I can use this time to really get better and make a difference and kind of separate myself from the people that might not have the opportunities that I had during COVID, and also weren't maybe working as hard during COVID.
And that's the great thing about baseball too, because it's one of those sports where you really just need a glove and a ball. Like you don't need that big of a facility in order to actually hone in on your game. And it seems that it really worked out for you, considering that you just said like you felt you were a little bit behind the curve in terms of recruiting, and you have kind of this lucky draw of everything getting shut down for a while. So it gives you that extra year to really work on your own game and keep it in your own control. And so, at what point did you ultimately make the decision to commit to Rhode Island, and what were those conversations with the coaches like? You mentioned that they were all over video calls, so that must have made them feel a little less personal than maybe they would have if they were in person. But
Yeah.
just the decision to commit to Rhode Island, when did you make it? What were some of the things that impacted you, and how were those coaching conversations like?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually probably May or June of that COVID year when it first hit. I had been talking to some schools for a while, and Coach Vance, they weren't technically allowed to like give tours, so he gave me an offer over the phone, and I went down. I think honestly that day or the next day with my mom, and he was like, "I'll just unlock the field, I'll unlock the barn, I'll unlock the weight room, and you guys can kind of show yourselves around, but I technically can't be there because of the recruiting dead period." So we went saw campus, and I'm familiar with the area because my aunt and uncle have a house in Narragansett, kind of right
Oh,
outside Eastward. So it's like we always like came down there here with our cousins, and we were at the beach and stuff. So it's a great area, and I already knew that coming in. I was like, it almost like felt like full circle. Like this is like where I'm supposed to be. Like this is where I'm meant to be. Like it's a great area. Like and a great campus besides the hill. That's my only complaint there.
yeah,
Um,
I feel that.
but and it's a great baseball program, so I'm happy with my decision. And the COVID recruiting was a little bit funky, but it had to make the most of what I got thrown my way.
And so then coming out of COVID, after you make the decision to commit, did you had your senior season in 2021 after you had committed? Do you feel that your performance reflected having that pressure taken off of your back, so to speak, of like having already
Yeah,
made the decision to commit And you know what? Like, I'm going to play college baseball, so I can just play free baseball right now. No one's really
Yeah,
watching me to say that they got to make a decision on me.
for sure. That senior year was so fun. Like honestly, it was probably like one of the my favorite years of playing baseball because like it's the last year I had to play with like all my hometown friends that I've been playing with my whole life, and I think like Ant talked about it in his podcast with you about how like high school ball just like has a different like aura to it. Like you are in school all day, like everyone knows like there's a game or whatever, and like you're playing for something as opposed to like travel ball. Like you're still playing to win, but like it's more like you're trying to get seen by college coaches, and you're like you can be like kind of selfish at that time where like you're trying to showcase yourself. Where high school ball, like you're trying to win a state championship and like perform for like your town and stuff. And that was why I think like that and having the commitment off my back like made it so much fun and playing with my hometown boys, and we ended up getting knocked out in like the semifinals, I think. But it was a great year, and I have like no complaints.
I mean, when you look back at the stats from your senior season, I mean, it seems to back it up. You had two school records, a single game strikeout record, single season ERA record of 0.00, and then getting named the Hampshire D2 Player of the Year, making All State. So, I mean, outside of actually winning a team championship, I mean, fun, I think, undersells the success that you had a little bit during your senior season. You were playing probably the most free baseball of your entire career at that point. But I mean,
Yeah,
it
no, it
seems
was fun.
so, yeah, it seems so obvious that once that pressure is sort of leaved off you, and you see that in all sports, though. I feel like that after you commit to a university, that initial like few months after that decision's made, you just see performances shoot through the roof because now you don't have to worry about it. You're like, you know what? Like, we're feeling good. Like, I'm going where I need to go. I did my stuff. Now it's like, let me just show out and show people, hey, I'm going to URI for a reason. And so after that season, you go into the summer and you're becoming affiliated with the team. I probably met a few of the guys on visits beforehand, and kind of coming out of all the COVID regulations and everything, you start to get more of a regular feel for baseball again. So just that transition from high school ball to then doing fall workouts and fall camps and stuff with URI baseball. Just what was that transition like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a pretty smooth transition. We like my recruiting class. We were probably like as tight as you could be without even like knowing each other really before coming in. We all met up during the summer in New York at one of our buddies' houses. Who he transferred to Lafayette 2 years ago, but like that was the first time like we all like had met each other and like had the best time. Like we clicked right away. Like texted every day in the summer. Like we had a group chat from when we all committed pretty much like, and like when someone else committed they would get added in, so like we knew of each other, we like knew everyone's faces and stuff, so it was like such a smooth transition, and the upperclassmen were like super welcoming, like guys like Billy and like Jordan Lasky, JMO, Bo Broody, who's now director of player development, assistant pitching coach at URI, just got promoted. Shout out Bo. But
There
like
we go,
those
Bo.
guys like kind of paved the way for all the younger guys, and like transitioning into the fall was like super smooth. Like there was no everyone felt part of the team, like, and it was just a great group of guys.
And so you redshirted the first year you were in Kingston in 2022. Was that a decision that you had conversations with your coaches in the fall, and was that something that you were in support of, or was that just like kind of like, you know what, like it's just part of the college process, so I'm going to go with it?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a conversation we had going into the season once we got back from the winter break. Obviously, we get back a couple weeks early to start practice in January, and like I pitched all right in inter squads and stuff, but there realistically, I probably would have thrown like 7, 8, 9 innings like the whole year, and it was just been a waste of a year. And that's kind of how Coach C approached it to me. And like obviously, like you want to play and like you want to be able to compete. So like that was the first spring where like I didn't play in a game like until summer ball that year, and it was tough at first, but like it was a growing moment, and it kind of fueled the fire a little bit. And um, I definitely like am very thankful that I used that redshirt year, honestly, because it made me like grow as a person and also like as a player on the field.
And it clearly seemed to work because once you were able to come through that redshirt year, and then 2023 you were able to make your debut, you were a part of a fairly competitive URI team that started off kind of down in the dumps during non-conference play. Was definitely a little bit difficult towards the start of the season. But as you guys get into A10 play, you start to really put some serious wins together, finishing 13-11 in the conference. But I mean, for you personally to have made 18 appearances for the Rams in your first full season in Kingston, a team best 3.7 ERA, I mean, just coming in, having sat out that previous year, longing to be involved. What was that feeling like, being able to contribute so early on in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it just like made all like the hard work worth it in the end. Like obviously, like still got a couple years left. Like the it's not done yet, but like that time, that period of time, that spring, my freshman year when I wasn't playing, like obviously, like it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And to be able to get back after playing summer ball, I did pretty well in summer ball, but I never really like. I always like expect to do well, but like you never know. Like I hadn't faced competition yet, so in the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, like maybe like this is a little bit of luck, like beginner's luck, maybe. Say keep it at that, and then like as I started like getting into the season, the conference play and stuff, I was like, oh, like this like I deserve this, like I worked for this, and like it kind of paid off. And that's kind of like my mindset. And like yeah.
And so then that momentum that you were building during that first year translated into 2024. You made 13 appearances. You started 5 games. So you started to assert yourself in this pitching rotation that the Rams were putting out every few days, and even getting a win versus UConn. And we know that that game's sort of becoming a rivalry. We see URI play UConn every couple of years in baseball. I've always been paying attention to it. It seems fun because having gone up to UConn and seen their facilities, it's easily one of the nicest that I've seen in New England, and they have a fairly good program that stays very competitive. So it's always cool to see them come down to face off against URI in any sport, but to do it in baseball is pretty cool. And you getting a win there, 4 innings, allowing only 1 run. Just what was that sort of feeling like to manage a win against such a strong opponent?
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't beaten them since we played them at home my or my freshman year, the year that I redshirted. And I guess like what I've heard is no one likes to come play at Bill Beck Field besides us. Like that place is freezing sometimes. It's windy. You never know where the wind's blowing. And I remember Coach Fish who played at UConn. It was his birthday that day, and he was like, he told me I was starting the day before, and he texted me in the morning when I was in class, like looking over some of the videos on their hitters and stuff, and he was like wind's blowing in, like no better feeling than this, and he was like, go get this win for me on my birthday, like that's all you need to do for me. So it was a combined pitching staff performance. Like I think Connor Grotjohan came in after me, or Jeremy, one of the two. I think it was Groot. He threw 2 innings, and Jeremy came in right after, and then Kenny closed the door, and it was I think it was we 2 hit them, and one was a bunt, I'm pretty sure. So it was a good feeling, and especially to get that win at home was huge.
And so you just mentioned it, the conditions of what it's like playing at home. Baseball is one of those sports where you can really vary the dimensions of your baseball field to be contoured to your style that you want to approach the game and so on, and really take advantage of the conditions that are at hand. And Rhode Island being the weather cauldron of so many different things, especially at the University of Rhode Island and on that campus, that field gets some of the craziest weather I've ever seen. And having to broadcast games there on just a regular folding table can be quite difficult, and I can only imagine what it's like actually playing on that field when you've got 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts really blowing the ball around. You got a turf field where the ball is bouncing. And so knowing the different styles of baseball fields and just the different sort of stadiums that you've played in throughout your career, just how does playing in Bill Beck stack up to wherever else you've played, and how do you feel that your game has, in a way, adapted to playing so consistently at a field like that?
Yeah. I mean, the Beck's definitely gritty. Playing at the Beck, you gotta be gritty. But it's funny because like the wind is either your best friend as a pitcher or you're like your worst enemy. I would say the most consistent it is it'll blow a little bit out to right, like towards the barn and the field house, and blow in from left field. So it kind of helps the pitchers out most of the time. You'll definitely get those days where it's howling out in all directions, but like it's funny. We'll be playing late in the fall, like Air Squad World Series, and the hitters will like smoke a ball to left field, like that isn't should be a no doubt homer at any other field or like if we were inside, but it just like goes nowhere. Like it almost looks like it stops midway up, like going over the fence, and then just falls into the left fielder's glove for a fly out. And the hitter, it's funny to see the hitters like kind of freak out over that sometimes. But then there's days where like I remember last year we were playing St. Joe's. I think it was the Friday game actually, and like the kid pitching, like you could tell like it was getting to him because there's like a couple balls that should not have been home runs for us that ended up being like no doubt homers. And like once you see like it's almost like seeing the defeat in like your opponent's eyes. Like you can just tell it bothers them. Like the cold bothers people. Like obviously it's still cold for us, but like we're kind of used to it, and like we can't really complain because that's where our home field is. So we just got to make the most of it and take advantage of those crazy conditions sometimes.
And so the Beck is undergoing some pretty serious renovations right now. It's been completely ripped up. New turfs being laid. It looks like new dirt might even be put down. So it's going under a serious redesign. But it's not the most all-inclusive baseball sort of facility. You've got a great field and nice dugouts, and you got the barn right next to it, decent bullpens, but not that much else in terms of like a baseball facility. And it's a far cry from a lot of the other facilities that you guys travel to throughout the season, especially when you head down south. And I remember talking about this with Anthony, and he was just talking about how in awe he was of going down to a school like Texas A&M and seeing just what Southern baseball looks like. And I mean, like the old saying goes, is that no one does it like the SEC, and no one takes football as seriously as schools down south.
Just
But
means more.
baseball's, yeah, it just
It
means
just
more.
means more.
And but when you look at baseball, it's one of those sports too where people really take it seriously. And so obviously, both half of your games during the year you're playing at the Beck, but the other half you're getting the opportunity to play at these really interesting stadiums. Are there any stadiums that you've gone to over the past couple years, whether you've played in them or you've just been a part of the travel squad, where you're just like, okay, this is a really sick spot to play?
Yeah, I mean A&M was crazy. Like that place tops any. Like it's just like everyone know all the fans there are like almost like educated baseball. Like they all know what's going on. They're all constantly like locked in throughout the whole game, whether they were winning by 10 or they were losing on Sunday. Like they constantly were locked in. I remember like seeing like you don't like really notice it when the stadium starts to fill up. I think there's like 7,000 there every game. Like they pretty much sold out like all three games on the weekend, and that seems pretty normal for them to do. But I remember like I was warming up, and our pitchers do our like little thing before, and I remember I always like try to get off the slope, like because on the weekends I'll come in from the bullpen, but I would start the midweeks. And I remember I was in the bullpen, like throwing a little like short box bullpen, and I look up and the game like just started, and their pitcher like I think it was like a couple pitches away from immaculate inning, and their fans were like they have the video board, whatever, like, and their fans were going crazy, and they take the field like they're doing like their war cry chant or whatever, and like everyone knows everything, and I just look up and I'm like, what is going on right now? Like this is crazy. Like it's almost like you're in awe, but at the same time you're just like this is like taking in the moment, almost like just like being grateful for the opportunity to even like go to places like that. And I know like I went to UVA my freshman or my redshirt freshman year, like, and that place was like they still had a few thousand people there and they were on spring break. So it's like being able to go to those big schools is like it's honestly like a dream come true. It's like what I wanted, why I wanted to play Division I baseball, and why I'm grateful that we have such a tough out of conference schedule in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and it seems like you really eat up that opportunity to be immersed in that sort of atmosphere. And Anthony talked about just how important playing games like that is, because rather than setting up a schedule where you're going to amass a great deal of wins during non-conference play against easy opponents, you're going down to very difficult opponents in order to give you and the rest of your teammates this sort of opportunity to play in really hostile environments, to really show what you're made of and show the style of player that you are. And do you feel that that sort of schedule and immersing yourself in that atmosphere before you really get the opportunity to play at home back up in New England, do you feel that that helps you take on games more, because for such a long stretch during the season you're the enemy in front of so many fans, and then you come back to Rhode Island where there's not as much of a crowd and you're at home, so you have more people supporting you, but you just feel more comfortable knowing that, all right, I've faced off against serious lions, I can take down this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like it kind of helps train the brain a little bit to train that competitive edge. Like you go into A&M and like I think it was like the third weekend of the year, and you're like we're like taking like these games from them. Like obviously it didn't go our way, but like that's always the mindset going in. And to be able to do that, face A&M and have that under our belt before going back home and facing like in conference opponents and midweek games and stuff like that, like he kind of trains that to be like, all right, like we went up against A&M, like competed with them, like we should be able to win every single game going forward. And that's like that's always the goal, but like it helps like reaffirm like those thoughts, and like it honestly it challenges us, and it also like at the same time, like if we went down and played like Delaware State, like I know they did that before I was here, and they just like they beat up on them. I think like the scores were ugly, and that like Coach C says all the time, like that gets us nowhere. Like that doesn't get us better. Like we're like trying to constantly improve, and I think those big series in the beginning of the year, like yeah, they're cool, but they're also like learning opportunities for us to grow as a team.
And so growing as a team has been obviously the goal since you've gotten there, since that coaching staff has gotten there, and they've really put together a team that buys into the culture and really wants to work to improve every single day. And it showed in your record. Obviously, you're starting to pick up more wins during non-conference play, and then you've remained competitive during Atlantic 10 play itself. I'm curious, just what's your opinion on the squad overall in terms of what talent you guys have at your disposal, and what do you think the squad that's going to be taking the field this coming spring in 2025 can do and learn from the lessons of the past few years to really push through and maybe break through that metaphorical glass ceiling and really hit like a new dimension of success?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the environment and the culture that we've created is like has been built upon every year, like kind of like the old saying, like 1% better, like every day. Like I think we really take that seriously, and I think it's like became true. I mean, like you look at our team this year, like or last year, like we had a fairly young team. We also had some grad transfers, which definitely helped that veteran presence. And that we have the same thing again this year. Like there's obviously going to be young guys that play. I mean, Reese is gonna he's going to be our shortstop, and Eric Brody, like they've all been playing since their freshman year here. And like it's a great mix, and like we have a bunch of promising freshmen that have come in that already proved themselves like in inner squads, that like they have the stuff to compete and to make a contribution to the team, and it's looking good. And I think the culture is like the main thing that like we've improved upon over the years, and I think like everyone pushes each other day in and day out in practice. Everyone's holding each other accountable, and that's only going to make us better by the time the spring rolls around.
And the usual go-to when I ask this question of what goals do you sort of have set out for yourself ahead of next season is usually, all right, I'm fully focused on winning an Atlantic 10 conference championship. I want to get team success. And in a sport like this where you have so many moving parts and you being one of the most integral ones, like you mentioned, having the ball in your hands, really controlling the game, that makes sense. But on a more personal level, as a pitcher, because this is maybe the most individualistic aspect of the game alongside being a batter. Do you have any sort of personal goals that you're setting out for to try and reach in this year or maybe the year after now that you're establishing yourself as a more consistent part of the starting rotation and the rotation coming out of the pen?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I talk about these goals with Coach Fish and stuff. And number one, stay healthy. I've been playing on a bad knee for the past 2 seasons, and I finally got a little procedure to get that fixed in June. So I'm rehabbing that back right now. But that's the main goal for me right now because that's the only way I'm able to give my team a shot to win personally from a pitching perspective. Like, and that's all that really matters to me is like I know like you already mentioned that's what everyone says like win an A10 championship, but it's true. Like, and that's the like truly the only thing that like the guys on the team care about. Like, obviously the rest is like great and all, and like personal success is gonna like grow the team, but like team success also grows personal success, and that's what our coaches preach to us, especially Coach Fish. And like it's that like for me to just be healthy the whole season and not like it. I mean, we've talked about it. Like, there's times during the year where like I wasn't able to give 100%. Like, obviously, I myself was giving 100%, but my knee was at like maybe like 80% that day, and like there was days that just it wasn't feeling great, and you just had to grit through it. So now that this is finally fixed, and in the past, like I'm hoping to stay healthy. I mean, obviously, I stayed on the field, but to what extent, you know what I mean? And I just want to give the boys an opportunity to win when I'm on the mound.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap this up, you mentioned that's the biggest goal, getting the Atlantic 10 championship, staying healthy and being able to contribute to that success. Do you believe that this team, as young as it is, this core that's sort of been established, that's been gaining so much experience over the past 2 to 3 years, do you think that this could be the year where URI really asserts itself as one of the true dominant forces in the Atlantic 10? Do you feel like that this team is ready to hop onto that pedestal and really assert themselves in the conference?
Yeah, 100%, and that's always the goal. But like 110%, like this group of guys is meant for it, and that's all that. Like, I mean, I've said it repeatedly so many times, but like it's truly like the only thing like in the back of our minds, like during these like tough weeks, the cold days at the Beck coming soon, and late fall, and like that's the only thing that's in the back of the mind to kind of get us through those long practices, those cold, windy practices, and like it's just like what are we doing this for? Like, obviously, like we love to play the game and stuff, but like we're here to win, and like the goal is to win an Atlantic 10 championship and to get us a spot in a regional, and that's like it's crazy. Like, you can see it on like everyone's face, like Ant, Eric, like we've all been itching for this for years, and like now's the time to do it, and I think we're gonna do it.
Well, you heard it here first, Rhody Nation. The field may be changing, but the goals and expectations are not. And as a matter of fact, they may be just going up as this team continues to grow and continues to really find its momentum and confidence at the right times. But Brandon, I mean, that was awesome. I'm so excited to be watching you guys, working with you guys as part of the commentary teams and doing my usual journalistic thing. But I'm so excited to just, as a baseball fan and someone who really loves the game, to see you guys be successful because baseball is so popular in New England, and to see a university and a program that you're a part of to continue on this trajectory and really break through that glass ceiling I mentioned earlier and become one of those forces in the conference would be so awesome to see. And I fully agree. I think, having watched this team, covered you guys for a while, that this would be the year. This is one of the strongest teams that I've seen in a while, and you guys have got incredible talent that's both locally sourced from Rhode Island and from elsewhere in New England. But I feel like that this could definitely be a very successful year for you guys, and I'm wishing you guys the best of luck.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This was great. And to everybody listening at home, thank you very much for listening as always. We'll be back next week with another show, more sports as always. If you want to stay tuned for updates, just tune in on Instagram or X at Marks Remarks Pod. And yeah, just stick around for more updates, and I'll catch you all in the next one.